Alright, ladies and gentlemen, my name is D. Glad to have you here with me. If you're brand new to the channel, welcome aboard. If you're returning, glad to have you back. This is the introductory video for a series I have planned on the game Dominions 4 Thrones of Ascension. As you can tell from the title, this is the fourth game in the Dominions series by Illwinter Games. It's a very fun series. I've always had a lot of fun with it. The basic idea behind this series of games is that you are a pretender god who is trying to take over for the previous supreme god who has decided the job is either too stressful, too boring, whatever, and has decided to leave the throne of heaven empty. Now, like I said, you are a pretender god trying to take over the job, but there are others trying to stop you and take it for themselves. This is actually kind of a grand strategy game. The best comparison really would be something along the lines of the Total War series, because you can have massive armies in this game. The main difference is you don't control the army directly. You can set orders for them, and the AI will execute it to the best of its ability, but you're not going to be telling a single squad of pikemen to charge an enemy directly. It's an interesting system, and it actually takes a lot of the stress out of the battles, because you can kind of, if you lose a battle that you think you should have won, you're like, oh, hey, not my fault, AI did it. Of course, that doesn't always hold up, because you gave the orders. Now, there are mods for this game. I don't use them personally, but I might eventually. My idea for this series is that after the first couple of games, where I'm going to just help you guys, I'm just going to see about getting it started, I'm going to have you, the viewers, vote on what I do, on how I play this game. What I mean by that is, I will create the pretender god based on what I think will work, but you guys give me the age and the nation in that age that you want me to play, and I'll play the most popular one. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, first off, go into game tools here. You can create a pretender god, or you can create one for a disciple game. I might do some disciple games. Those don't take nearly as long. You can also create disciples, which work for your pretender god in disciple games. They can only be used in these games. Disciple games are pretty much new to 4. You can also view creative pretenders. I've got quite a few. But anyway, what I was talking about with ages and nations. So when you decide to create a pretender god, you have 3 ages. You have the early ages, the middle ages, and the late ages, and this actually has a big impact on the game. In the early ages, your technology is nowhere near as advanced. You might have iron weaponry and armor, but not much better than that. And like it says here, a lot of people are going to be using wood, stone, or bronze for their weapons and armor. The difference here, the trade-off here, is that magic is at the peak of its power. There's going to be a lot more places to get magical abilities from, or magical resources, because magic does require resources in this game. In the Middle Ages, it's a pretty good balance. I like to play in the Middle Ages for the most part, because, like I said, it's a good balance, and it just feels right to me. And then there's the Late Age. Magic has gone downhill. There's very limited resources for it, but at the same time, your mages like it says, they've banded together, and they're actually a lot more versatile. They're not quite as powerful, but they do have more abilities they can use. And also, technology in the late ages is a lot higher. For example, you'll have a lot more people using steel weaponry rather than just straight iron. But in terms of the magic, like I said, it's not as good. So like in the early ages, you can have somebody that can sling lightning and devastate an entire army from three territories over. Whereas in the late ages, they probably have to be able to see them, but the person will be able to do more than just sling lightning, like they would in the early age. These guys are very specialized, not gonna have as much ability to branch out, but they're gonna have a lot more raw power, where it's kind of the opposite in the late age. Now, in each age, you have various nations, and I'll go into these. I'll make a list of these later on that I'll post either in the description for this video or another one. And what age you're in actually determines what nations you have access to and how the nation units. So for example, let's go back real quick to the early age. If we pick the early age, and let's just take Ulm up here. It's, as you see, it's listed as Ulm Enigma of Steel. This is Ulm at the beginning. They don't have access to their main source of ability, which comes in the Middle Ages. These guys are very strong warriors. They're not as good at magic, but their soldiers are incredibly strong. But they're still going to be using mostly iron here, and they do have some stealth troops, but mostly you're going to be stomping all over people with big ironclad soldiers, or big armies of ironclad soldiers, because they're Ulm as regular people, effectively. But you go down here to the Middle Ages, and now it says Forges of Ulm. They have, at this point, Ulm has managed to master the creation of steel and actually make it better than like what we have. They have access to a lot of steel and their specialty of black steel, which is even stronger but a bit heavier. Their troops are even better in this age, and they are incredibly difficult to stop if they get a big enough army. The big issue there is they have to get the army first. And then in the late age, the reason I'm using Ulm for this example is because Ulm is one of the few I can think of that actually branches across all three ages. But yeah, then you have the Black Forest. At this point, Ulm has kind of gone downhill. They had a massive civil war and got cursed. It didn't go very well. Basically, now a lot of their troops are actually going to be ghouls, which are undead, not as disciplined as your average human troop, but a little bit stronger, I think. But yeah, so like I said, the ages do change what nations you have access to, as well as how a nation in that age acts from a different age. Also have a map editor. I don't know how to use it. I've never bothered to because it's just too much details to worry about. Whereas you also have the random map creator. This is general sizing stuff. You can never fully get rid of sea area. You can go down to 0%, but you're always going to have some because sea provinces. Down here is the details. Mountain and caves, these are on the map stuff you'll see on the main map. Mountains are probably more important to worry about. Caves are good for some nations because they live in the caves and they're blind, so they actually don't have an issue with being unable to see. Mountains, you can make them impassable so that nobody can walk through them. You have to go around them. Some mountains will still have trails that you can go through, but that's actually very few and far between. I'm pretty sure ruggedness and hill slash craters, I'm pretty sure these apply to the battle maps, which actually does have an effect. I'll show you a pretender guide I have in just a minute to show you the stats screen and go over that a little bit. But yes, these will affect, I'm pretty sure these affect the battle map, and they will affect the fatigue of your units, which is actually a really big deal. River occurrence. Rivers are massively important terrain features. You only ever see them on the Empire map. The issue here is if there's not a way to cross the river, you'll see a path if there is a way, but if there isn't one, you either have to wait for the river to freeze in winter, or if your god has a cold scale, which I'll explain in a minute, then the river can freeze and you can cross that way. There are some troops that just can't cross rivers no matter what, vampires being the big ones among them, which there's a lot of mythology stuff in this game, and if I remember reading correctly, one of the guys behind this is actually his degree is in mythology, so he really does know his stuff. Then sea provinces, these can go down to a size of 10, which is incredibly small. Like I said, you can never fully get rid of them. When you create a map, you can apply anti-aliasing. This is going to eat up memory, as is anything above about 3,000 on this, on pixel size for width and height. I can speak. Wraparound. If you don't have these on, it's basically like you're looking at a map on a table. If you have east-west wraparound on, you scroll to the far left or right edges, and the map will loop, and it will do that infinitely, so you might get a little confused, depending. Same with north and south, but this is going to the top or bottom. All right, let's look at one of my pretenders. Since we were talking about Ulm, we can look at the middle-aged god for Ulm I created. No, he's not middle-aged himself. He exists in the Middle Age. That's Vulcan here. over here you'll see the physical form of whatever you're looking at. In this case, the physical form of the god. Up here you'll see the name. I chose Vulcan because I mean, look at him. He is literally the Roman god Vulcan at this point. And then you'll also see what he is. He is a Forge Lord. That's just the unit type. Up here you have your stats, hit points, protection, all this stuff. These are all combat stats. Morale does play a big part in this. If your units lose all their morale, they will break and run. Sometimes they'll actually try to fight to the death. It doesn't work very well. Strength, attack skill, precision, I forget. Targeting skill. Yeah, precision is for spells and shooting. Encumbrance and fatigue. Like I said, fatigue is a big deal. If this gets too high, then your troops can actually get diseased, and diseases, injuries, outside of a few specific nations, injuries and like this guy has an affliction right here. He's got a limp, in keeping with the mythology behind him. That never goes away. Movement, this is, he can move 2 on the map, and it also shows action points, which is how fast he can do, like how much he can do during combat. Leadership value, this is how many troops he can lead. He can lead 85 normal troops, so like if you give him like 85 knights, that's his maximum. Undead and demons are a special class because they're not considered to be really killable because these are already dead. These are evil spirits. Magic beings, other general things like elementals, fairies, that kind of stuff. If you don't have, like, this guy, as you can see, he can lead 85 normal units, 90 magical beings. He cannot lead any undead or demons, so you can't even give them to him. That is actually very important, because if an undead or demon doesn't have a correct commander on the battlefield, they will break. The undead will just dissolve, they'll fall down, be dead, be fully dead, whereas demons, I think they just dissolve and go back to whatever plane of hell they came from. Along here you have items, 2 hand slots for magic items, head, torso, feet. Alright, sorry about that folks, had to check something. Yes, as I was saying, these are just miscellaneous items, trinkets. This is for magical gems. Magical gems are they're the resource you need to cast spells. If your commander doesn't have them, but can cast if your commander has magical abilities but doesn't have gems, they'll be able to use some basic spells in battle. But if you give them more of them, they'll be able to use a lot more powerful stuff. Along here are some basic stats, or these are magical abilities. So this guy, for example, is Fire and Earth Mage at level 9. This is how well he researches. So 41 points, you get 41 points to research every turn that he's doing research. As you can see, this one is Fire Resistant 23. So if he takes 23 or less fire damage in one attack, it doesn't hurt him. Master Smith, this is, as it says, this is for creating magical items, because you can do that, and you really should in this game. But he adds this value, so in this case he adds 1 to all of his magical paths whenever he creates an item from it. And these are magical paths, by the way, the fire and earth. There's quite a number of them. He also is very good at forging magic items. It only says 2, so it's not very much, but it does reduce the cost of forging a magical item. And we already mentioned affliction. He's limp, or he has a limp. Down here, some more important. These are more empire stats. This is how strong his dominion is. So 4 is not very. It's actually a little under the middle. The highest you can go is 10. I think the highest you can set at God creation is 9 though. So order and turmoil. If you have an ordered land, people are nicer to each other. If you have a turmoil land, stuff is more fun, but it's kind of dangerous. Productivity and sloth. Productivity, people make more stuff, they work harder. Sloth, they don't. It's that simple. Heat and cold, obvious. Both are actually kind of bad at the extremes, although some nations prefer having a heat or a cold scale. Growth and death. Higher growth means more food, more people. Higher death scale means that people die off a lot faster, things don't go as well. At highest level, which is 3, at 3 death, people tend, after a couple of seasons, maybe even as much as a year and a half, a lot of your provinces are going to be empty of living people. So That's very specific to some nations. You don't want to do that for everybody. Misfortune and fortune, or bad luck and good luck, is another way to put it. What this does is, for example, if there are random events, and you can never have 100% good or 100% bad. This influences what it'll be, though. If you have higher luck, you're more likely to get a good event. If you have higher bad luck, it's more likely to be a bad one. And one of the bad events you can get can actually kill you by about turn 4. That is not an exaggeration. I have died really early on by a single bad event. And the last one here is magic versus drain. If you have higher magic, then you have a lot of more magical resources in your place. Whereas if you have a lot of drain, you have a lot less, but enemy magic is also a lot less effective. And I'm getting a really bad frame rate drop again. Last, this is important. Imprisoned, there's 3 stats. You can have them free, where your god is free to begin with, and you can just start doing stuff with them. Typically, those gods are going to be a little bit weaker in the long run because they don't have as many creation points, which is how actually I got all this stuff. You can also have one where you get a bit more, but they break out in about a year, maybe a year and a half, depending on your luck. That's not based in the game. That's actually just a random event. Then imprisoned, you're lucky. They break out in about 3 years. And that gives you the most points. Down here, weapons, armor, very simple. This is just a description of the god or unit. That's pretty much it for the introductory video, folks. If you like the idea of this series, please feel free to leave a like or favorite the video, leave a comment. Those do help me out. Or you can also subscribe to always get updates on the channel. And I really do hope to see you again. Hope this series takes off. And that for some reason my game stops going at like, oh wow, now it's back to normal frame rate. I don't know what just happened. Anyway, as I was saying, I hope you guys enjoy the show. Leave a comment, like and favorite the video, and subscribe if you like. I have been D. Good night, and good gaming.